The Meghan and Harry show has received enormous coverage, but what has barely been explored is that it's a parable underlining the assault on Western democracy and public debate. Indeed, this global controversy tells us an enormous amount. At the core of the issue in the media coverage, there is an objective to tear down our institutions and the foundations of Western society, the rule of law and free speech. Firstly, we have the spectacle of the truly privileged having the gall to complain to the rest of us about how they've been robbed, excluded, bullied and marginalised. Yes, that's you too, Julie Bishop. Secondly, accusations by the woke and the righteous are accepted without challenge by the media and their fellow travellers. This is because the cause supports their collective political objectives. Those that dare stand up and challenge the woke narrative are cancelled or vilified. Thirdly, there's an underlying motivation, in this case, financial gain. In other cases, it's about power that is totally obvious, but it's always covered by a cloak of purity of motives. For example, fighting racism or combating climate change. And this reality is then ignored by the mainstream media. Fourthly, the use of a form of attack that is impossible to defend. In this case, the racism accusation is designed to besmirch a whole institution rather than an individual. And the Porter case has significant parallels. However, and this is the final point in this parable, the silent majority actually do get it, but the media and the Twitter class don't. Now, yes, the younger members in the community tend to buy the nonsense, but the bulk of public opinion is at odds with the woke. Indeed, we're now seeing polls that demonstrate just this point. Now, we need to move away from this kind of public debate and uphold the institutions that have made us so successful. Well, Jerome, your first time on the show. Good evening and welcome. What do you reckon?
Well, thanks, Campbell, and thanks for having me on the show, everyone. You talk about institutions that make us successful, and I just don't know how the monarchy is doing the hard lifting for Australia at the moment. Whilst some serious issues were raised by Meghan and Harry, I just, I don't see its relevance to a modern day Australia. This is on the back of some huge scandals in the monarchy with Prince Andrew, and now we're basically seeing a family squabble play out for the globe. And you're right in saying that it's the billionaires and the millionaires having a discussion about something very personal to them. But how is the monarchy serving Australia right now? How are we a better country because of it? It served its purpose here in Australia. If Prince Harry and Meghan can leave the royal family quite quickly, I think perhaps now is the time for us to leave the royal family as well.
Well, Jerome, I reckon there are plenty of people who might agree with you, but I'm, for one, though, actually am seeing it differently in that I'm seeing actually this spectacle demonstrating that that we actually do need a monarchy. We do need the sort of stability the Queen and the Duke have given for so many decades of service. But let's have a go and see what Tanvir thinks about all this.
Look, I'm happy to say at the outset that I'm a Republican, but I do like your illusion that this illustrates like much bigger currents, and it plays out all through this story, particularly a kind of millennial obsession with authenticity and their kind of individual search for fulfillment, if you like, versus some of the older values, be it duty, sacrifice, an attachment to institutions. And those tensions are really brought out by this story. And look, it's in terms of the criticism you're alluding to, I mean, it's obviously wildly variable. I mean, the British press have very much come against Meghan and the British public more generally. But you do get the feeling her audience was not. And interestingly, I'm referring to Meghan specifically because I think Harry's a real victim here. You do get the feeling he's been tagged along for this kind of expression of victimhood. And it's going to do him, everlasting damage in terms of your relationship with his family. But I think for Meghan, who, in spite of whatever her motives are, we can all agree that on one level she's sort of one of the world's top social climbers, let's put it that way, and she's been a very successful one. But this audience the audience for her is the US and the world beyond Britain to some extent, and that's the audience she's going for. And on that respect, she's probably been stunning.
Yeah.
I think she's been stunningly successful in that regard. And you are right. Look, at one point I'd touch on specifically when you talked about the tabloid racism, where the British tabloids are just, just kind of tarnished that, it's racist. Well, I was looking at it when I was reading your editorial, I was reading a few articles about it. And when Oprah was doing the interview, they put up various articles. And almost half of them were from Australia, America, and other parts of the world. And even a couple of them there was one saying, Meghan will, sin or stain the royal family. But that was actually a reference to a model who tweeted something stupid. So they were taken out of context, as it often is. So some of her accusations, you really don't hold water. Similar to her son not getting Prince. She actually had no right to get that title, but she alludes to it as part of some sort of broader racism story.
Well, Tanvi, you, in the early part of what you just said, you really jumped onto really what my point was here, and that is it's not so much the issue itself, the Meghan Harry thing, but it's what it actually more broadly demonstrates about those undercurrents. But do you see that in what I've said, Jacinta?
Oh, look, I have to certainly agree with what Tanvir has said, and I think globally and particularly coming out of the US, there's been this sort of encouragement of narcissistic behaviour, which is, based on identity politics, which doesn't serve any other purpose, but it's self-indulgence for the individual. Now, Tanvir, you've got a background in psychiatry, and, I think it's concerning that this kind of behaviour on a global stage is in many ways being encouraged. I mean, there are those of us where we're recognised as POCs, I think, these days. I think that's the abbreviated term, people of colour. And somehow we have to recognise ourselves as victims, and our agency is removed because of the colour of our skin. And then we've got individuals who are completely and utterly privileged individuals attempting to paint themselves as victims. And personally, I don't think the people of the UK are going to buy into it. I think the royal family is very much loved, and I think it's certainly an attempt on Meghan's behalf to ensure that her her career is extended. I mean, surely she would have known exactly what she was getting herself into, marrying into the royal family. I agree with Tanvir on the fact that I think Harry is being dragged through an awful situation where his whole, his family issues, their dirty laundry is publicly being aired on such a global scale. And I don't think it plays into the idea of whether we should become a republic or not in Australia. I don't know how it actually relates to Australian issues, but certainly on the point of this push-pull between, people of colour and white people around the country. If you've got half a brain, you're just simply not going to play into it.
I mean, some of the most amusing things... Sorry, Campbell, go on.
Yeah. No, well, I guess I just had to explain why I had the go at Julie Bishop along the way through, if you noticed, and it was very similar. There's Julie Bishop, who I have always looked on with a huge amount of respect. In recent years, that's deteriorated a bit, but a woman who's achieved so much, who's served at high office and in as distinguished way as our foreign minister, now the Chancellor of ANU, has achieved so much, but it was in the media in the last week or so saying that she'd been, basically done over by the blokes, and I'm sorry, I don't buy that. Julie has had a great career, has done so much, and has been the chair of some very important organisations. So, it's that same sort of stuff that I'm talking about tonight.
I guess what's been quite disturbing throughout all this, and I think we all agree that the method in which this dirty laundry was aired is it doesn't sit well with us as Australians, and I suppose that is why I made those comments earlier. But what's been really disturbing is how we've had a woman in Meghan reveal that she had some serious mental health issues and that she was suicidal throughout her troubles, and we've then had the media and the public pile on her for revealing that. And I
but she brought herself out. Like she decided she didn't want to be part of a media storm, and yet she's thrown herself back out there as part of a media storm. And if you had serious mental health issues, you know, you would pull yourself away. You'd do everything you can to take care of yourself, and that's certainly not going back out on the media stage, especially, you know, globally as they are. And I'm sorry, but I think sometimes, you know, people like to play into that victim mentality, and certainly there are those who certainly claim that they were suicidal. But, you know, when it comes to real issues of that particular sort, people don't usually come out and say that they were feeling suicidal in those moments in their lives.